In this presentation, I'm going to discuss about one of the famous politician in United States. His name is Rudy Giuliani. He was the New York City mayor during the 2009-11 2000 attacks, terrorist attacks in the New York City, and he was being famously called as the Mayor of America. And he was initially an attorney and a lawyer, and then became the attorney general for the in New York, and then became the New York mayor. And afterwards, some time, once he tried to become the presidential candidate for the Republican Party in United States. He couldn't win the primaries, so he gave up his aspiration to become the president of the country. And here recently, uh, he was having a number of legal issues since January. I should say since January of 2021 or December of 2020. Since then, he was having a lot of legal issues, and recently there were two issues that popped up, and the very first one is in the month of March 2021. There was a news item stating that there was a criminal investigation on about his dealings in Ukraine. And again, on 28th April 2021, the news came, which was been reposted on 4th May 2021, saying that the FBI had searched his home and seized his phones and computers. So overall, in the month of starting January or February of 2021, he's having some sort of a legal issues, personal issues, issues in his career. So I picked up his chart, birth chart, to see what was the main reason for him to have so many issues from an astrological perspective. This presentation is purely for students or people who are interested to learn astrology, or who are already aware of some of the fundamentals of astrology. For them, I'm going to explain this chart, keeping in mind that the listener, whoever is listening to this presentation, is aware of astrology, and from astrological perspective, I will try to find out what is the reason for the native to have so many issues. As usual, the very first thing that I do is to see if I can get the birth details of the native in AstroDatabank, because that is the my primary reliable data site. So when I looked into AstroDatabank, it gave me that the date of birth as 28th May 1944 around 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon, and the place of birth is Brooklyn, New York. So using JHora software, I generated, assuming that the time of birth is correct. And when I generated that time of birth, with that time of birth, the very first thing that I usually look at is the ascendant in a Rasi Sandhi or Lagna, is the ascendant in a Lagna Sandhi? That means what is the inclination of ascendant? Here the ascendant is 5 degrees in Virgo. So it barely passed the Rasi Lagna Sandhi. So if there is any possibility for the time of birth to be before 2:30 or after 2:30, if the time of birth is wrong by 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, then this particular ascendant, if it is before 2:30, then the ascendant might be Leo. If it is after 2:30, then there will be no Lagna Sandhi for the ascendant. So this itself tells you that if we assume that the time of birth is correct, there is a Lagna Sandhi for this particular native. Usually, when a person when the person was born with a Lagna Sandhi, then one way it can be interpreted as that the native's destiny is not clear. It's we cannot precisely say what is the Netu's destiny because the Netu was born in a Lagna Sandhi. This is the general principle in astrology that I learned from my grandfather. Next, I look at the planets. If I look at all the planets, the only planet that I see 100% sure being in Rasi Sandhi, because it's a planet, we call it as a Rasi Sandhi. In Rasi Sandhi is Moon. Moon means mind. Because of that, here it says at 2:30 p.m. when the Netu was born, according to J-Hora software, it says that the moon is in Leo at 0 degrees. So even if I take half an hour before it, then there is a high possibility for the moon to go back to Cancer, even though, and also in Cancer, it will be in a Rasi Sandhi too. So that tells you that moon, whether it is in Cancer or Leo, it is for sure to be in a Rasi Sandhi. The only advantage is that if the moon is in Cancer, even though it is in Rasi Sandhi, it is in its own house. So whatever the moon is the 11th house lord at that time. Cancer is the 11th house. So the 11th house lord is residing in the 11th house, is Labhasthanadipati is residing in the Labhasthanamu, which is a positive sign. Since the Netu was born, actually the Netu was an immigrant. The Netu's parents, actually I should say this way, Netu's parents were Italian immigrants, and he was the only child, and he was one of their best child, of course, and he started as an immigrant and then became one of the richest person in United States right now. So this tells you that if the moon is in Cancer, Labhasthanamu, then the Labhasthanadipati will be in Labhasthanamu. That indicates that exactly that is what happened to this Netu. He's been financial gains, there are a lot of financial gains in his career, and so I presume based upon his life history, I'm going to correct this chart with the moon being in Cancer for all my predictions in this presentation. Another thing is, if you look at it, the Netu has a Kala Sarpa, whether you call it a dosha or a yoga, but he has the Kala Sarpa combination. That's another important thing to look at it. And now let me start looking at it. What are in each and every house, what planets are residing? The first house is Virgo, Lord is Mercury, and the 10th house Lord is also Mercury. So first house is empty. Second, third, fourth houses, all the three houses are empty. The fifth house, Ketu is residing. That means Rahu is the 11th house, having a direct aspect on Ketu on the fifth house. Very important to keep in mind. Rahu is in the Labhasthanamu, co-joined with Labhasthanadipati moon, and is having a direct aspect on the fifth house. Since Rahu is in the 11th house and having a direct aspect on the fifth house, it clearly tells you that when the Netu was born, the Netu's father had a lot of issues, and that's what his life history tells, that he had gone through a lot of problems when he was a kid. That's because his dad was an Italian immigrant and had to go through a lot of hardships. That's exactly the reason, because Rahu is directly looking at the fifth house. When the Netu is too young, the Rahu's impact on that house is showing on his father. Once the Netu became an adult, then it will show on his children. The next one is the sixth house is empty, seventh is empty, eighth house, Mercury, the first and the 10th house Lord Mercury is residing in the eighth house. Eighth house is secret dealings, secret affairs. So Mercury is very good in communications. So, and it's also the 10th house Lord. The 10th house Lord residing in the 8th house always indicates that the Netu is very good in communications, and especially holding the secret dealings or having a secret affairs. The 9th house is in 9th house Lord is Venus. Venus is residing in the 9th house, in its own house, and it is co-joined with the 12th house Lord Sun. Look here, Venus, the Bhagyasthanadipati is residing in Bhagyasthanamu, Labhasthanadipati is residing in Labhasthanamu, and the Venus is also the Dhanasthanadipati. That is the reason why this native became one of the richest person on this planet in New York City, is because of this one simple reason. The Labhasthanadipati is residing in Labhasthanamu, Bhagyasthanadipati and Dhanasthanadipati is residing in Bhagyasthanamu. So the next one is the 10th house. Saturn is residing in the 10th house, and that tells you that the career will be most of the time the career will be dealing with foreign officials, and sometimes here and there with things that has a because it is Mercury, it is a house owned by Mercury, some communications, dealings with some sort of a communications who are at higher officials. And then comes the 11th house. This is a very important thing here. In the 11th house there are 3 planets plus Rahu. Jupiter, the 4th and the 7th house lord Jupiter is residing in the 11th house. The 3rd and the 8th house lord Mars is residing in the 11th house. The 11th house lord Moon is residing in the 11th house, and Rahu, the terminator, is also residing in the 11th house, and the 12th house is empty. So this is the chart for this particular native. Let me go and look at the Vimsottari Dasa for this particular native. The Jupiter Mahadasa started in 2012 and it lasts all the way till 2028. And then in 2019, when transit Saturn entered Capricorn into November of 2019, exactly at the same time the Venus Antardasa started. So keep in mind, the Venus Antardasa started exactly when transit Saturn entered Capricorn. That means when transit Saturn touched natal Ketu, and the transit Saturn is having a direct aspect with natal Rahu, natal Jupiter and natal Mars. During that time, Venus Antardasa started. Remember, Venus is the Bhagyasthanadipati and Dhanasthanadipati residing in Bhagyasthanamu, that 9th house. And then let's go and start looking at the Jupiter. First of all, Jupiter Mahadasa, for any native, Jupiter Mahadasa is one of the best Mahadasas in the native's life. And those natives whose Mahadasa started at that age usually will end up very good with least problems, even though if Jupiter is a functional malefic, then but still if it is a functional malefic, even then he will try to do something good to the native. If it is a functional malefic, he might minimize the malefic effects of what the native is going through. Here Jupiter is the 4th and 7th house lord residing in the 11th house. 11th house is Labhasthanamu. So the 4th is Sukhasthanamu or home life environment. 7th house is Kalatrasthanamu and is residing in the 11th house Labhasthanamu. This is the natal Jupiter position. So as I said earlier, transit Saturn is having a direct aspect on natal Jupiter starting November of 2019. So when Jupiter Mahadasa started, and starting November 2019, when Saturn is looking at natal Jupiter, transit Saturn is looking at natal Jupiter, as usual there is a rule that says that when any sort of a relationship between Saturn and Jupiter always ends up in disappointments or failures and some sort of a hardships, some sort of a troubles, I should say it as that way. So since November 2019, the natives will start noticing some sort of a troubles. So either the troubles started in November 2019, or the event that results into troubles has been initiated in November 2019. One of the things happened in November 2019 as far as okay, and then the Venus Antaradasa, when it is going on, if you start looking at it, the Venus Antaradasa and Venus Pratyantaradasa is all the way till April of 2020. So that's the time when things are just going in a normal way. we have no idea what type of issues the NATO had gone through. Then all the way till Rahu Antardasa Pratitadasa came in 2020 October, and it lasted all that way till 2021 March. So in 2020 November we had the national elections, presidential elections. In 2020 December 20, yeah, in 2020 December, he was attorney for the then president Mr. Trump. So he was the legal advisor for the then president Mr. Trump, and this was during the Rahu Pratyantara Dasa, and the Rahu Pratyantara Dasa ended on March 23rd. Keep in mind, the Rahu Pratyantara Dasa ended on March 23rd, then came the Jupiter Pratyantara Dasa. As I said, when transit during that March 23rd, transit Jupiter is also in Capricorn. So transit Jupiter and transit Saturn, they both are co-joined in Capricorn, and they both are having a direct aspect in Cancer, where natal Jupiter and natal Mars and natal Rahu are residing. Okay, exactly the same time, that is exactly in month of March, transit Rahu is in Bhagyasthanamu, co-joined with natal Venus and natal Sun. So when you look at the way all these planets are co-joined, let me start first with Rahu. When transit Rahu has co-joined with Venus, that means Bhagyasthanadipati and Dhanasthanadipati. Transit Rahu has co-joined with Sun. Sun is the leader of the country, or any leadership stuff. And then is also the 12th house lord. That's another drawback here. And then transit Saturn and transit Jupiter has co-joined with natal Moon, natal Jupiter, natal Mars and natal Rahu. All these things are started on 23rd March 2021. The very first news that we came to know, that was publicly announced in the media, is on 26th March 2021 that there is a criminal investigation has been is going on. We don't know when it started, but it is going on and it was publicly revealed. Look at it. Rahu will not keep quiet. Whether it is a transit Rahu or a natal Rahu, he will reveal something that is not expected. And that's exactly what happened here. Transit Rahu co-joining with Venus, whose Antardasa is running, and transit Rahu has co-joined with the Sun, which is the the leader of the country, or the 12th house lord. And then natal Rahu is now co-joined with natal Jupiter, natal Mars, natal Moon, and having a direct aspect on transit Jupiter and transit Saturn. So this is the primary reason from an astrological perspective how on 26th March this particular event became publicly, what was a secret until then was revealed in public on 26th March. And then the Jupiter Pratyantara Dasa is all the way till August of 2021. So when you look at it, whatever the secret that has been revealed or made public will be now getting amplified because of the way the things are going. And somewhere in April of 2021, transit Jupiter moved to Aquarius, the next house, which is the 6th house. So the 2nd and the 4th and the 7th house lord is now residing in the 6th house. 6th house is deaths, illnesses and employment conditions. So this tells you that when transit Jupiter entered the 6th house from 6th house from Rashi Lagna, and it's the 8th house from Chandra Lagna, the NATO started incurring debts because from Moon, it is the 8th house, the secret dealings or secret affairs started coming out. You remember, natal Rahu is with natal Moon. So natal Rahu or the transit Rahu, they won't keep quiet. They will keep they will keep revealing the secrets for this particular NATO as long as transit Jupiter is in Aquarius, that is until September of 2021. And in October of 2021, when transit Jupiter comes back to Capricorn, it will co-join again with transit Saturn, and again it is going to have a direct aspect with natal Rahu and natal Jupiter and natal Mars and natal Moon. And exactly at that time when transit Jupiter comes back, the Pratyantara Dasa is Saturn Pratyantara Dasa will begin somewhere in August. So from August of 2021 all the way till January of 2022, this particular native will be having so many legal troubles, and those will be directly related to the 11th house, which is the Labhasthanamu, means financial gains or financial losses. So now this is the legal troubles, and these are all the malefic planets. So it won't be financial gains, it will be financial losses. And since the Venus Antaradasa is running, it will be Bhagyasthanam and Dhanasthana Adhipati. So that financial losses will have a major impact on his personal wealth and also in his earnings or on his earnings. And then since Jupiter Mahadasa is running, and Jupiter is co-joined with Rahu in the 11th house, and Jupiter is the 4th and 7th house lord. 7th house is the Marakasthanamu too. So it will have some impact on his health related stuff too. So overall, from a Vimsuttari Dasa perspective and having a quick look at the transit planets, what I can say is that all these legal problems, everything that the native is going through will be there all the way till 2022 January. That means the whole 2021, the whole year 2021, the native will be having legal problems, will have a lot of issues pertaining to will be having financial losses, and then a lot of secrets will be revealed that nobody ever have expected or ever dreamt about it. Let me start analyzing the transit planets. As usual, the most important thing that I pick are the two slow moving planets, Saturn and Jupiter, and the catalyst planet Rahu. These three are the very important transit planets that one need to look at it while doing any transit analysis for any given year. Here for this particular native, let's see where are the transit planets. So transit Saturn will be in Capricorn all the way till January 2023. This is June 2021. So that means 1.5 years. For the next 1.5 years, transit Saturn is going to stay there in its own house. Now, when we look at transit Saturn, the third aspect of the transit Saturn is on the 7th house from Rashi Lagna and the 9th house from Chandra Lagna. The most important thing here is the 9th house from Chandra Lagna. 9th house is Dharmasthanamu and Bhagyasthanamu. 7th house is as usual, 7th house is called as the Marakasthanamu. So transit Saturn is looking at the Marakasthanamu through its third aspect from Rashi Lagna and Dharmasthanamu from Chandra Lagna. So just keep this in mind. And next, transit Saturn's direct aspect is on the 11th house from Rashi Lagna and the first house from Chandra Lagna. Rashi Lagna 11th house lord is Moon, and Moon is residing in its own house. So transit Saturn is directly looking at the 11th house lord Labhasthanadipati, and also Moon deals with mind. So that's the second point we need to note. And also transit Saturn's direct aspect is on natal Jupiter and natal Rahu. So having an aspect on natal Saturn either co-joining with Rahu, whether it is transit or natal, is going to have the same impact, which is unpredictable. And transit Jupiter is the 7th house lord from Rashi Lagna and the 9th house lord from Chandra Lagna. So while transit Saturn's third aspect is on the house owned by Jupiter, transit Saturn's direct aspect is again on the Jupiter itself, the house lord itself. This is one of the most crucial thing that one needs to keep in mind when we are looking at this particular Netu's chart. And already transit Saturn entered Capricorn somewhere in January of 2020, and since January of 2020 till June of 2021, those who are residing in United States might have heard a lot of his activities, whether it is personal or political or whatever it is, and how it has led to some of the activities leading against the dharma, some of the activities that had issues with earnings, bhagyasthanamum, some of the activities that had led into financial gains or losses, and the most important is a lot of activities, or I should say some of the activities are unpredictable, that nobody had ever expected the need to getting involved in those activities. That is because of transit Saturn having a direct aspect on natal Rahu, and also some of the activities had some sort of a mental instability for this particular Netu. That is because natal Rahu is co-joined with Moon, and transit Saturn is directly having a direct aspect on natal Moon. So this is how the seventh direct aspect of the transit Saturn is happening. And then comes the transit Saturn's 10th aspect. 10th aspect is on Libra, which is the second house from Rashi Lagna and the third house from Chandra Lagna. And if you look at it, the Libra, the second house is Dhanasthanamo and Kutumbasthanamo. Already natal Rahu is having a direct aspect on transit Saturn, and now transit Saturn is looking at the second house from Rashi Lagna, which is the Kutumbasthanamo and Dhanasthanamo. So this transit Saturn until January 2023 creates almost all the mess that it can do, and there is a high possibility for this for the events for this particular need to be involved in events that are not predictable, or nobody has ever thought of that. After going through the transit Saturn analysis on this particular Netu, the next slow moving planet that I take is Jupiter. Transit Jupiter is very complicated here, because transit Jupiter will be in year 2021 until from January of 2021 till April of 2021. Transit Jupiter will be in Aquarius, and then somewhere in April of 2021 it retrogrades and comes back to Capricorn and co-joins with the transit Saturn. It will stay there till September of 2021, and again after September of 2021 it goes back to Aquarius. So two things we need to do for doing the transit Jupiter analysis. The very first thing is, between January of 2021 and April of 2021, transit Jupiter, when it stays in Aquarius, and again from September 2021 all the way till end of 2022, December of 2022, it will be in Aquarius. So we have to do two analyses. The first one is what are the possibilities when transit Jupiter is in Aquarius, and second thing, what are the possibilities when transit Jupiter co-joins with transit Saturn in Capricorn. First and the foremost, when transit Jupiter is in Aquarius, which is the 6th house from Rashi Lagna and the 8th house from Chandra Lagna. Look at here, Jupiter is the Maraka Sthanadipati, that means the 7th house lord Jupiter, and when the Maraka Sthanadipati is residing in the 6th house, it indicates that the Netu's health will be a little bit challenging, which that will happen. That is something that is possible before April of 2021 and again after September 2021, and the possibility can go all the way till December 2022, all the way till the end of December of 2022. That's the first thing. So when the 6th house, 7th house lord is in the 6th house, there's another possibility is seventh house is Kalatrasthanamo. So the other possibility is sixth house is house of separations. So the other possibility is the native getting separated from his spouse. That's the second possibility. And keep in mind, this particular native has the Kalasarpa combination. So, and that's seventh house lord Jupiter, natal Jupiter is co-joined with Rahu. So whatever happens will be something that is unpredictable, whether it is pertaining to the natives being separated from his spouse, or the natives being ill health, and that might lead to some sort of a hospitalizations, because from sixth house Jupiter's direct aspect is on the 12th house, which is nothing but hospitalization, illness and hospitalizations. So it is unpredictable again for this particular native what can happen when it comes to these two with respect to Jupiter's transit, Jupiter's aspect. Now let's go and look at the Jupiter aspects. Jupiter, oh, by the way, one second. When transit Jupiter is back in Capricorn, that is from April of 2021 all the way till September of 2021, it's going to join with transit Saturn, and it's going to have a direct aspect on natal moon, natal Rahu, and natal Jupiter. Since Jupiter is the 7th house lord from Rashi Lagna and the 9th house lord from Chandra Lagna, 5th and 9th house lord from Chandra Lagna, the impact would be something that has a direct relationship with the 9th house, which is Bhagyasthanamo and Dharmasthanamo, and the 7th house, which is the Kalatrasthanamo, and above all, even 4th house, Jupiter also owns the 4th house, which is the Kutumbasthanamo or home life environment. So there will be some sort of a chaos in this particular native from starting April of 2021 till September of 2021, that is directly related to Bhagyasthanamo, means wealth, Dharmasthanamo means ethics, Sukhasthanamo means home life environment, and these three might be because of transit Saturn. Transit Saturn is Jupiter being co-joined with transit Saturn. Now let me go and look at the aspects of transit Jupiter. Fifth aspect. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth aspect, this is another crucial thing we have to look at it. From April of 2021 till September of 2021, transit Jupiter is co-joined with transit Saturn. When it goes to Aquarius, its fifth aspect is on the 10th house from Rashi Lagna and the 12th house from Chandra Lagna. Keep in mind, the 10th house career, 12th house hospitalizations or imprisonment, and unexpected expenditures. Sorry, the three things. 12th house is hospitalization, imprisonment, unexpected expenditures. And Jupiter's fifth aspect, transit Jupiter when it is in Aquarius, its fifth aspect is on the 10th house, which is Gemini. And if you look at it, there is natal Saturn residing there. So from April till September of 2021, transit Jupiter co-joined with transit Saturn, and from January of 2021 till April of 2021, and again from September of 2021 all the way till December of 2022, transit Jupiter is fifth aspect is on natal Saturn. So which tells you that all the way from January 2021 till December of 2022, the native's life will have the same impact with respect to Jupiter and Saturn, and that impact you just keeps continuing all the way till December of 2022. And then comes Jupiter's direct aspect is on the 12th house from Rashi Lagna. Look at it. Jupiter's fifth aspect is on the 12th house from Chandra Lagna. Jupiter's direct aspect is on transit. Jupiter's direct aspect is on the 12th house from Rashi Lagna. 7, 8, 9. And transit Jupiter's 9th aspect, look, is on the 2nd house. Again, transit Saturn's 10th aspect is on the 2nd house. Now transit Jupiter's 9th aspect is also on the 2nd house. 2nd house is Kutumbasthanamo and Dhanasthanamo. So a lot of things are possible for this particular native in his life to happen that would create unpredictable chaos with respect to home life environment, family members, and career, career, unexpected expenditures, imprisonment, and hospitalization. So the same thing that transit Saturn is going to do, transit Jupiter is also going to do this, almost the same thing, but from a different perspective. The last thing that I look at is the transit Rahu and do the impact analysis on the NATO. Particularly for this particular NATO is because the NATO is having the Kala Sarpa combo. I'm just saying the combo. I'm not saying it as a yoga or a dosha because I don't like either of them. It's just a combination. That Kala Sarpa combination exists for this particular NATO. And since natal Rahu is in the 11th house from Rashi Lagna and the first house from Chandra Lagna, the Kala Sarpa combo has a major impact for this particular NATO. First of all, from Rashi Lagna, the destiny, it is the financial gains or financial losses. So the NATO will have ups and downs in when it comes to financial gains or financial losses. There's no steady, like the NATO might gain so much of wealth and all of a sudden something happens and the NATO loses most of the wealth that he has earned. That is the financial gain and financial loss because natal Rahu is in the 11th house from destiny, the Rashi Lagna. Also, natal Rahu has co-joined with natal Moon, who is the 11th house lord. Moon indicates mind, and so some of the decisions that the NATO has made in his life might have an impact, direct impact on whether it is a financial gain or a financial loss. And now it comes from Chandra Lagna, Rahu is in the first house. That means the Tanusthanamo. So whatever the financial gains or financial losses that the NATO has incurred as if through his destiny is always directly related to the NATO itself, Tanusthanamo. Now that is what happens with respect to natal Rahu. And now let's go and start looking at the transit Rahus. First and the foremost, transit Rahu entered the Taurus in September 2020 and it will be there all the way until June 2022. So when that is, the Taurus is the Lord. Oh, it is the 9th house from Rashi Lagna and the 11th house from Chandra Lagna. See, 9th house is Dharmasthanamo and Bhagyasthanamo. 11th house is Labhasthanamo or financial gains or financial losses. When Rahu, transit Rahu entered in September of 2020, that's when it co-joined with the 9th house Lord Venus, the 2nd house Lord Venus, and the most important is the 12th house Lord Sun. So Sun being the leader indicates that the NATO has tried to portray as a leader or a leading something or got an opportunity to lead something which will have a direct relationship with respect to Bhagyasthanamo and Dhalasthanamo. And because it is Rahu has co-joined, transit Rahu has co-joined with these two, that is something that is it is the 9th house. So that is something that is a possibility is unethical or against the dharma. Remember, dharma, the definition of dharma is completely dependent upon the person who is listening or who is viewing the chart or who has. So it is not consistently I can say this is what is dharma, this is what is adharma. So I'm just leaving over here. So when transit Rahu is in the 9th house from destiny, it's going to have a direct aspect on the 3rd house, which is the Scorpio from destiny. But it has a direct aspect on the 5th house from Chandra Lagna. Scorpio is the 5th house from Chandra Lagna. So whatever is happening here, it's impact the NATO, whatever the decisions that the NATO make or whatever the NATO is trying to do, the impact will somehow be the impact, the children will somehow face the impact of it. So that means if the NATO makes any positive, any activities that are against the dharma. It's not just the Netu who will have the effect of it, the impact of it. Even his children will have some part of the impact on that particular whatever the activity the Netu has done. So this is very important because the Netu is having a Kalasarpa combo. And somewhere in June of 2022, I know June 2022 is too far away, but I just want to let you know that in June of 2022, transit Rahu, this is very important, transit Rahu enters the 8th house from destiny. Keep in mind, the 8th house is Mrityusthanamu, that is where, and Rahu is a terminator. Anytime Rahu enters the 8th house for any person, whether it is from Rashi Lagna or Chandra Lagna, so that means that the terminator has been in the Mrityusthanamu, which indicates that there will be some sort of a disturbances in the longevity of that particular Netu. Here, when it enters the 8th house, which is Aries, the lord of the Aries is Mars. Mars is one of the most violent planet. And if you look at the natal Mars, the natal Mars has already co-joined with natal Rahu and natal Moon in the 11th house. And also natal Mars, the 8th house lord, has co-joined with the 7th house lord Jupiter. So this is a very crucial combination from June 2022 onwards, all the way for 1.5 years. That means till end of December of 2023. So from June of 2022 till December of 2022, what is going to happen is the transit Rahu will be in the 8th house, co-joined with the 12th house Lord Mercury from Chandra Lagna, and Lagnadipati from Rashi Lagna. That is, Mercury is the Lagnadipati from Rashi Lagna, and 12th house Lord from Chandra Lagna. It's going to co-join until June of 2022. And remember, transit Saturn is going to stay wherever it is, that is in Capricorn, all the way till December of 2022. So from June 2022 till December of 2022, transit Rahu will be in Aries, 8th house from destiny, and 11th, 10th house from Chandra Lagna, and transit Saturn is still going to be in the same Capricorn, which is the 7th house from Chandra Lagna and the 5th house from the Rashi Lagna. And the most important thing is transit Jupiter is also going to be in Aquarius, which is the 8th house from Chandra Lagna and the 6th house from Rashi Lagna. So from June 2022 till December 2022, the Netu's life will be unpredictable and extremely challenging from my perspective. This is through astrological perspective. This is what I can see based upon the planetary combinations. Now that I had completed the analysis, let me do the final conclusion. The first and the foremost thing that I want to tell here is that transit Jupiter and transit Saturn and transit Rahu, all these three transit planets are going to play an important role in this Netu's life, especially starting January of 2021 all the way till December of 2022. We had already seen between around April or March, April of 2021, the Netu had gone through some legal issues. So transit Jupiter was between January and April of 2021. Transit Jupiter was in Aquarius, and then it came back to Capricorn, where it joined with transit Saturn. That's exactly during that time the Netu was started having legal problems. And these legal problems are directly related to financial troubles, that has some sort of a link between his career and his employment conditions. And these legal problems, whatever the Netu started noticing it from April of 2021, will continue all the way till September of 2021. And
the general public might not be knowing all those things, but based upon the astrological planetary combinations, and to the best of my astrological knowledge, I can foresee that the NATO's problems will still continue till September of 2021. And then in September of 2021, transit Jupiter will go back to Aquarius. That way, transit Saturn is now alone in its own house in Capricorn. But that doesn't mean that the problems will get resolved. Remember, transit Rahu is still in Taurus all the way till June of 2022. So whatever the problems that the NATO has seen until September of 2021, and the problems that were subdued and not known to the public, they get exposed from September of 2021 until June of 2022. And this is the time where a lot of events that can happen, unfortunate events that can happen in this particular NATO's life, which is mainly because of this financial gain losses and the issues with respect to his career, resulting into some sort of a misunderstandings with his family members. And there's a possibility for the NATO to fall in large debts or encounter some unexpected expenditures. And because of these two things, the NATO will be having mental anxiety, mental stress, and due to the based upon his age and other medical situations, the chances are extremely high for this particular NATO to be hospitalized. And there are extremely minute chances for this NATO to undergo a surgery somewhere between September of 2021 and December of 2022. But keep in mind, it is exactly during the same time, and to be more precise, from June of 2022 to December of 2022. I'm extremely precise here, that these medical issues and hospitalizations, we might create, it is just a word, might create some sort of a troubles pertaining to the longevity of this particular NATO. And this is, I had already explained the reason being transit Rahu going to be in Aries, which is the 8th house from the destiny, from Chandralagana, no, from Rashi Lagana. And while transit Rahu is residing in the house owned by Mars, natal Rahu is co-joined with natal Mars in the 11th house from Rashi Lagna, in the first house from Chandralagana, where the 7th house Lord Jupiter is also residing, and the 8th and the 6th house Lord Saturn, the Maraka planet, is having a direct aspect on all of these planets. So between June 2022 and December 2022 is when the NATO's health will be extremely troublesome. And these are just my astrological predictions. Please keep in mind that I do not owe any responsibility if any decision has been made based upon what you heard in this presentation. These are just based on the planetary combinations to the best of my astrological knowledge. I'm just trying to explain to the astrological reasoning behind the predictions. Thank you very much for watching my video, and I'm sure you all will like it. Thank you.